This week's episode features my dear friend and returning guest, Joaly Trinidad, co-founder of Root and Wisdom and Sacred Roots Foundation. As a ceremonialist who's dedicated her entire life to Indigenous medicine, with a background in counseling, she weaves in plant sacraments, sound, breathwork, and movement to guide others back to their truest nature. So on this episode, Jo opens up about her journey into motherhood. Together, we explore common themes amongst mothers, such as anxiety and fear around birth, how her birth plan transformed, how she worked through her fears and surrendered her sense of control, mom guilt, mom anxiety. And I think anyone can relate deeply to this one, is that sense when everything is so good and you're just waiting for the other shoe to drop. Her story speaks to women everywhere. My hope and intention here is that this conversation helps other mothers feel less alone and reminds them that their story matters too. Highlights from this episode. We talk about how to use a pendulum to play a fun witchy game Jo played as a child to predict how many children she'd have. When she mentioned it and that it was accurate, I was like, okay, we gotta learn how to do this together. She shares how various plant sacraments, in particular one called San Pedro, supported her within her daughter's conception and birth. She shares a paradigm-shifting story where her Indigenous midwives and a hospital team collaborated together for the very first time to support her C-section. And Jo shares a little bit about how she and her husband Troy plan to raise their beautiful, beautiful baby girl Zariah based off of philosophies such as the Buddhist Five Remembrances, work by James Hillman, and more. If you are interested in learning more about Jo, connecting with her, or working with her, you can find all of her information in the show notes. Welcome to the School of Whispers podcast. This is your host, Stephanie. I'm a licensed acupuncture physician and herbalist with a background in psychology, health sciences, and exercise physiology. Within my own spiritual awakening, I found myself learning pivotal lessons when I got myself to be in silence. Within that silence, the whispers came through. This is my sacred space of vulnerable storytelling where my guests and I share about the magic that comes from a life of following these whispers. I'm grateful you made it here, and I hope this show inspires you to live a life of following your own whispers. Let's get into the show. Well, Jo, welcome back to the show. It's too bad that the listeners can't see your face, but seeing your face makes me so happy. And I feel like, well, same with Troy, with our part one podcast and part two, like he changed and I have changed so much. And you and I are just totally different people from just last year with our first interview. So I want to give you the space to reintroduce yourself. And a question that I ask everybody now is asking for you to share what you stand for.
Thank you so much for having me on again and for just inviting me to come back on in this stage in my life because it feels like a record keeper and just beautiful to be able to listen back to where I was then in the last podcast and how much I've evolved in this process. So it's really beautiful to be able to have these conversations with you. And yeah, my name is Joaly Trinidad. I am many, many things. I'm a mama. I work and devote my life to Root and Wisdom, which is a portal that my partner and I created to hold Iboga ceremonies. We've also created Sacred Roots Foundation, which is a nonprofit dedicated towards being able to contribute to Indigenous way of living, to being able to give back to African communities that work with iboga and many other indigenous life forms and earth-based practice keepers to be able to just contribute to this regeneration of sustainability of earth-based practices. And I have a master's in counseling. I am a yogi, breathwork practitioner, works biofuel tuning, many different tools that just bring us back to our original blueprint and help and assist in being able to fulfill our dharmic purpose. What I stand for in this moment is for truth, for being able to return to truth and to that original vibration of truth.
Basi. That's I feel like that's when you said the original vibration. Um, it makes me think of this topic that we want to dive into of motherhood as a conscious spiritual woman who's just constantly seeking out like what is the truth here? Like what is the original vibration here? Because I think within the I was gonna say the Western world, but I feel like it's the zeitgeist of social media. I don't think the world is just like East and West anymore. It's just all cumulative and right within our fingertips. And also in communities and all of that. As somebody who works with fertility, working with mothers and postpartum, like I see it. As a woman, I see how there is this strain from the original vibration of the truth of what it means to be a mother, to be like a steward for a brand new soul in this world. And there's just so much guilt and shame and distraction that it's so easy to fall into. There's no shame for falling into it because it's a part of it. But yeah, for the listener, just to like build the story here, we're going to be getting into the inception and the birth, or rather conception, birth, and experience of little Zariah in Joe's life here.
It's beautiful that you mentioned that. I had this realization the other day where I was thinking about what it means to embody truth and what keeps us from this embodiment of truth. And part of that is the mind, and the mind grasping onto the past and using the past. I was having this conversation with Troy where I was telling him, when sometimes he asks me why I did something, it doesn't feel true and authentic. That sometimes my reasoning for something doesn't feel, it feels like the mind trying to make sense of something. However, when I did it, whatever I did in the moment, it was because I was carrying this sensation and bringing it out from the present into from the unmanifest into my body and then into that action. And that is something that is happening here and now every time. So when the mind tries to explain something like that, it doesn't always do it justice. And I think that relates a lot to Zariah's birth story and this deep listening in the present moment and being able to step away from the mind and from outdated systems and from the past and to how I consciously wanted to partake in this portal of motherhood.
There's a question in one of my favorite podcasts, Free Birth Society. That she asks every woman before she gets into her birth story is, who were you before you became a mother? So I know it's a big question, but I would love for you to, before we like really get, I would love for you to weave like where you are now. How old is Zoe? She's born in November, so she's,
9 months.
oh my God. Okay. Yeah. So a year from now, who were you, or even before getting pregnant, before all of that, like who were you as a woman, and how did you view birth and motherhood?
And this is something I have always struggled with whenever it's time to speak about myself and what I do and who I am. I've always struggled with that because once again, it's me making a story and picking something as a way to define myself, which is ever changing. And, I can tell you right now my idea based on the past of who I was and the story of who I thought Joe to be before motherhood. And what I will say is that there was a lot of fear involved. However, I always thought of myself as a mother. There was this very distinct moment where I understood that I wanted children very, very young. And I always felt as though I knew the souls of my future babies. So much so that I had these names and continuously went and visited my list and checked the baby names and revised them based on the information that I was getting from them. But I always felt like there was this open portal of communication with my future babies, which is wild to say out loud right now. But yeah, I felt that I always knew. However, did not know exactly what it was going to look like to be able to bring a baby into this world. Obviously, being able to meet the right partner had a lot to do in being able to be more confident in saying, yes, I want to do this. But there was a lot of fear. There was a lot of thinking that it needed to be in the hospital system or in a very traditional way, and how after working in the Department of Education, how I was going to educate them changed because I realized I did not want to school them in a public system or send them to school in general.
Mm-hmm.
So all of these things changed big time. Yeah. Were you asking in regard to me and my perspective as a mother, or in general, just who I was before?
Whatever felt relevant within that question is perfect. Yeah. So, yeah. Pausing there, do you like now that you're around Zoe and you're like experiencing her as a little human form, but also a soul, do you look back and you're like, yeah, I remember when you came in. Like I remember that little inkling. Like, does she have a similar essence in that?
Yes, 100%. I look at her, and Troy asked me the other day, we were talking about this. I don't know how it came up or what specifically sparked this conversation, but I look at her and I feel like we are reunited. It did not feel like we are meeting for the first time, or I am getting to know her in this life form and in this present moment. But I look at her eyes and still feel this sensation of, I knew you before, we've communicated, we've been over this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
it's
so
wild.
precious. That gives me chills. Okay, so let's go to the point where did you and Troy like have many discussions on like, all right, it's time, or was it just kind of like a moment that led to her conception? Does it make sense? Like, did you guys, you seem like
Mhm.
you know what the question I'm asking. So,
100. So we had conversations. It's interesting because when we first met, I had shared with him that there was this just very silly childhood game that I would play in Dominican Republic, where you would take a necklace and you would put it over someone's hand and figure out how many babies they were having. It seems like a child's game that a child has no business in playing. But
yeah, that's a witch's game in child hands.
it was something that we would do all the time, me and my friends and my sister, and I shared with him that very early on, this is a way in which spirituality was just a part of everyday life. and without really knowing it. And now, you hear people talking about pendulums, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is something that's always been in our life. And I shared with him that, and the first thing he asked was if I would be open to doing the pendulum baby game on him.
Of
And
course.
and I did it virtually, just imagining that I was holding his hand on top of mine, and being able to do it. And I the same amount of babies came up for him in the same order of gender, girl, boy, that it came from me. So I just thought, okay, I'm not doing it right. I'm obviously doing this virtually, and probably I am influencing, and I'm doing my own reading instead of his. But then we met in person, and then I did it again on his hand, and it turned out to be the same.
You have
And
to teach me that game.
it's so easy. I mean, for the listeners, you basically just hold out your left hand, you extend your thumb, and anything that has a weighted, creating this pendulum effect on a necklace, on a string, on a rope, whatever, you're dipping it 3 times between your index and thumb, and then dipping it 3 times on the pinky edge of your palm, and then placing it over your hand. And if it becomes a circle, then that's a girl. And if it's a line, it's a boy. So
Mm.
you can do that. You dip it 3 times inside, 3 times outside, then hold the pendulum over your palm and see what it does. And continue to do it until it's still. And it
Okay.
includes miscarriages, abortions, things like that. So I think that's important for people to know that those things also come up.
Yeah, that's fine. So after you get the one circle or line, then you do it once again, the dips, and then back to center. Okay, got it. All right, everyone, take notes.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically, we had this, and this was the precursor to this unfolding of many conversations. He initially wasn't sure if he wanted to bring babies into the world, and we just continued to talk about it. And honestly, for me, it felt more like a relationship that I had within myself, and this communication that I had with those souls that are meant to come through me. And when I first did Iboga, I had a vision of getting initiated. I believe I shared this in our first podcast together. I had this vision of me getting initiated with a baby. So it makes sense that I eventually got initiated, and was 5 months pregnant. After that vision, I had sat with Aya for the first time. And in that journey, I always had these names, Zoe and Zen, for my baby's names. And this just powerful little tiny human voice came and said, my name is Zoraya. She proclaimed and you demanded that she was named this. And yeah, I always laugh because I'm like, that's such a Dominican name. But I found out later, just the symbolism, and how powerful that name is. Zo meaning spiritual leader in African languages, and then Raya of the sun of enlightenment. So spiritual leader powered by the light. And then later finding out that Zoraya in Arawak and Taino, where our roots are from, means ancestral portal, ancestral land, and it just, for it to have so many meanings, was incredible. So before we created this beautiful human, Troy had a really powerful experience with Iboga, where he had this vision of a baby boy coming in and saying his name. And a week later, that's when we created little Zoe. So we, for a long, long time, were convinced that it could have been a boy. I mean, I always knew, but he had this experience with Iboga, he had this vision. And then a week later, we went to Envision. And one day, I looked at Troy and I told him the baby wants San Pedro. I don't think I was super, super present because I don't remember this. And we ended up, because our friend just so happened to have San Pedro, we ended up communing with Wachuma for the first time and having a beautiful moment where we decided to sneak into Whale's Tail Beach, where whales go to breed. And we snuck in around 3 something a.m. and just it felt right to create life there and to do so in nature on the beach in this particular breeding ground during an hour that is very known in many spiritual traditions to indicate when the veil is thin, where we have high amounts still of melatonin in the body, so that we are in a different brainwave state where we're able to create to expanded to connect to expanded states of consciousness. And it felt absolutely right. Like there was no thinking in that moment. Very much like the way Kogi people or indigenous traditions intentionally create life in nature. It felt like we were just tapping in to this just line of vibration beyond our logical thinking mind. So all we could do is submit to the flow. It felt like ceremony. You just had to give in, and we just gave in and created our little baby girl. And the howler monkeys howled, and the birds were cawing, and just the sun was just getting ready to rise up. It was absolutely incredible. And I could not think of a better time to create life.
And for anyone who's unfamiliar, Envision is a music festival in Costa Rica that happens in February, March-ish. If anyone wants to go, you'll see us there this year. But it's really a truly magical festival in itself too. So God, what a she knows how to make an entrance, that's for sure. And I was thinking too. Really, it's because of Zoraya that I agreed to go to Africa to do my initiation because you had such a positive experience. You felt so safe there. Like the fact that Zoe was in your belly the whole time made me realize I can do this. And also, like, these are people who really respect and honor life. It just her involvement in your initiation helped me make that decision. So that's really interesting too, our little light bringer.
It seems like she has been doing work just before she even came into this physical realm. So it doesn't surprise me to hear that she is. I am so honored, and I could cry. I feel so blessed. I feel so, so blessed that I just get to experience her in this life and get to witness the magic of the things that she's already accomplished. Yeah.
In her 9 months.
Thank you for sharing that. No, it really touched my heart.
Mm. So let's
Mhm.
let's go a little bit more into your birth. How did you envision it? How did you prepare and how did it play out?
Oh my gosh, it started with so much anxiety. I was in so much denial when I found out I was pregnant. It was funny because my aunt, who's a seer and a clairvoyant and just a mystic, she called me when I was getting ready to go do initiation, and she told me you're gonna give birth in November, December. And I was in so much denial because after preparing for so long, I mean, the mind comes in. It was like, oh shit, this is happening. And when I did find out I was pregnant, there was a moment of, oh my God, bracing myself, like, what does this mean? And from that moment, it seemed like the mother was born. the mother was really born of, wow, there is this life, I care about it so much. An attachment to her well-being also generated this immense amount of anxiety, of fear, of something wrong happening. I mean, even the things that you hear, like you can't tell people you're pregnant until the safe window. Things like that started to get into my field of, oh, it is very known, that there could be the possibility of a miscarriage. And all of that, I mean, from that moment just started to generate fearful thoughts of what can happen and this immense amount of responsibility to sustain life and to make sure that this baby is healthy and cared for. So all of that just compiled, and I had to learn how to understand that this soul is going to grow and to be whatever it grows up and is meant to become or not become, be able to surrender to life and to trust that everything is unfolding in its divine master plan, and that all I can do in that is take care of myself so that I can listen, so that I can be a vessel of transmission. So I am present to know how to respond and how to create fertile grounds for this baby to be what it needs to be. So within that, yeah, it took moments of oscillating in this anxiety. And then when I would come back to myself, I found myself making really beautiful choices and being able to listen to what this baby wanted, what conditions she wanted to be able to come into this realm. And in that listening, I was able to find this birthing team in Colombia because we decided that we were going to bring her into this realm in Colombia. And the parteras, I felt this instant connection to them. It was a beautiful team of doctors and nurses in Colombia that just had so much indigenous wisdom of how to bring this baby into the world. And after a couple of conversations, I found out that they worked with San Pedro and psilocybin. And then it clicked, oh, the baby wants San Pedro. So not only was she conceived with San Pedro, she was also brought into this world with San Pedro. And I just, once again, in awe of the clarity in which she was communicating what she wanted from the very beginning. So I had this beautiful birthing team, and we created this container for her to come into the world naturally. I also had my anxieties of what would happen if I needed a C-section, because this baby, I mean, Troy is 6'5" and was a 10 point something pound baby. So as the months came in, it started to dawn on me that she's looking quite big. I mean,
Yeah,
I
she was a
would get
big,
asked, she
yeah.
was a very big baby. So I would get asked if I was sure this is what, because while I was pregnant, I was still living in Florida and doing OB-GYN visits, OBGYN visits. And this was just to help soothe my mom anxiety, because I would get nothing other than just the confirmation of the baby's okay from these visits. And they asked me if I was sure of her conception date, which I thought immediately is like, why would you ask me if I'm sure about this? Of course I know my body. Instead of them saying, no, the baby is big. That's how they shared that she was big, was by undermining
Yep.
my ability to know
Sounds
baby.
about right.
Yeah. So yeah, I would get asked this. And yeah, it started to dawn on me that she's quite large. So I had to face that perhaps she might not be born in this natural way and setting. And I was able, everything I, as much as possible, tried to face head on. So I went into it once I felt this overwhelming surge of, oh, is she going to be a C-section baby? So I meditated and I allowed myself to go into that possibility of that happening and feel everything that was moving in my body. And then after I did this meditation practice of embodiment of that reality for myself, the fear went away. So when it was time for Zoraya to enter this this earth side portal, I had a beautiful setup in Cali, Colombia, with my birth team. And it was a water birth for 11 hours. I was riding this magical portal, just feeling very, very connected to her voice. It felt as though I was a mermaid or a water-like being swimming through these waves. And what it felt like was as if I was traveling with her from wherever she was arriving from and accompanying her in the journey of coming here, which is so beautiful. And this was before taking any San Pedro or any psilocybin.
I
This
was
is
gonna
just
ask
how,
that.
yeah, this is riding the waves of contraction, of allowing it to come in. And I just felt as though I completely submerged myself into the waters of birth. And as we rode these waves, eventually they asked me if I wanted some San Pedro, and I just felt completely surrendered to yes. Uh, had a little bit of psilocybin as well, and it just further pushed me into this portal that I was navigating with Zoe, and it was
Is
so beautiful.
is that why they serve it to enable the mom to go deeper into the
To
portal?
to induce naturally, to open, yeah, all
Yeah.
of these things, to be able to relax the mommy, to create a deeper connection with the baby, and to to build more resilience and being able to withstand the contractions in a more
Mm,
surrendered.
mm,
Because if there is tension, and you're then you're riding against the wave,
mhm.
and you're creating tension in the body, then you're tightening your jaw, you're tightening your pelvic floor, and that's not creating an open environment for the baby to move through.
How beautiful that the addition of these herbs, these plants to that do not numb you. Like I don't know much. I haven't tried Wachuma before, but I know that it really puts you deep in your body. It's not, from what I understand, it's not a dissociative. Whereas, in a traditional model, it's kind of like, get me out of this pain, help me dissociate. Whereas these medicines, they facilitate through, or not these medicines, because just the comparison of drugs, or there it is a drug. Okay, these herbs, with the purpose of bringing you through deepening the connection and helping you open. Like, to me, that's how you work with pain. Not like, get me out as soon as possible, numb all my receptors as soon as possible. And to each their own, but for me, that resonates so much more.
Absolutely. Just that school of thought, even without having to ingest anything, that's something that is so beneficial and really helped me, because instead of having this aversion to pain, I welcomed it because I knew what was coming. So even the contractions, when they came, I was so excited, and I allowed myself to feel every bit of it, because within every part of that sensation was information about this new being.
Whoa.
Yeah, so incredible. So, I mean, yeah, I rode the wave for about 11 hours, and then it came to a point where I felt this sort of disconnect, or this just feeling that I wasn't riding the wave with her anymore. And that's when I knew that she was stuck. And at that moment, I started to understand that we were going to have to transition to the hospital. And I tried a little longer, but at this point, I was fully dilated and I had been pushing for quite some time. And I just could not push any longer. I felt like no matter how hard I pushed and all the energy that I can harness into pushing, she was not moving, she was not budging. So we migrated over to the hospital. And mind you, these sort of things are still taboo to be able to do natural birthing with a birth team. When you go into the hospital, you can't always share that that's what you were doing. So when I got to the hospital, I couldn't tell them right away that I had been pushing for 11 hours with the natural birth team. So we went in there, they did not know. So immediately they started to ask me to push, and they couldn't understand until we finally just fessed up and said, no, this is, we were working with a natural birth team. And this was the first time that they allowed the partera, the doula birther, to be in the room. They actually were embracing the fact that we were doing this naturally, and we're like, it's okay. And that was unheard of, for the parteras themselves. They had never been embraced in that way. So it was really, really just, she came in and also opened up a bridge in this hospital for them to be able to allow the birthers to be present. And then together we all made the decision of the C-section to be able to help her. And mind you, when it was time to do the C-section, they and they finally were able to get baby Zoe out. They were shocked, because yeah, she was pretty big. She was 9.4 pounds, 54 centimeters long. So apparently she had just been wedged in my pelvic floor, and just couldn't go any longer. So she actually was stuck. And
How tall
being
are
able
you?
5'2".
Yeah. Yeah. And like for those who don't know, Joe, like you are petite. You are a petite 5'2".
Yeah, tiny but mighty. But
Yeah.
but yeah, she was very, very big. So everyone gasped. And basically I just heard my doula go, es enorme. She's enorme.
And she came out looking like she was like 3 months old too. Like just like fleshy and chunky and beautiful.
Oh, chunky. And what's funny too is because Troy had this vision before we made the baby of this baby boy and the baby boy name and all of that. He was convinced that it was a boy. So when she came out, he goes, "Where's the penis?"
Well, you see, Troy. That's turns out you were wrong.
Yeah, it was, oh my gosh, it was a moment of, I was right. But once she was in here, like she was in this realm, the first words that came out of my mouth were, "My baby." It was this, I really felt like I was just being reunited with this soul who had been communicating with me for so long, and giving me little hints and little clues of how, of being initiated in Africa with her in the womb, with what her name was going to be, with what type of environment, how she wanted to come in, the plants surrounding her, with what people. And it just really felt like this affirmation or this reward for this deep amount of listening and presence of here you get to meet this beautiful soul that's been speaking. And yeah, it was just so nice. It was so beautiful. I will never forget.
Two things I want to highlight is one, that you were the one who felt and made the call that she was stuck. And I'd use quotation marks because, like, stuck implies that there's something that went wrong, but it doesn't sound like that was the case at all. Versus somebody else, like you feeling like you had to outsource, or somebody else coming in and telling you what they think was going on. I think that's such a important distinction, that that came from you while you were deep in it within yourself and with Zoe. And then the other thing I wanted to highlight was that you were working with these indigenous birth keepers. And in the very beginning, when you said like what you stood for and what you work with and what you do is a lot for indigenous peoples, for keepers of indigenous wisdom. And here you are with your little soulmate, with your two soulmates, Troy and Zoe, bridging that gap once again, creating a relationship with these birth keepers and the Western model. And I think about how many like indigenous women in that village, in that town, city, wherever it is, that are now going to have just more opportunity to birth in the way. Because I really think that, especially in the holistic world, everyone's like, oh, natural birth's the only way. I think the only thing that rings true to me is the best way to birth is what feels safest for the mother. And what feels safe in the moment can change. You're allowed to change your mind. So yeah, those two things really shine to me within your story.
Mhm. And they actually, the hospital asked me to come back and do an interview so that I can share my story
Wow.
and share the partera was allowed to be in the C-section room, and how they honored my birth plan, how they delayed cutting the umbilical cord, did skin to skin contact right away, kept her natural liquids and natural moisturizer on her skin, and just all these things that they did. It was a team of just beautiful women surrounding this space, and it was really just important to be able to share that, because sometimes there could be this attachment to the baby needs to come in this natural way, and if you end up doing the cascade of intervention, as they say, with the pitocin and then the C-section, and all of those things end up in being something negative. It was actually, it felt like a turning stone in the history of that hospital, being able to have someone come in and do this naturally, and to say that there are hospitals that can honor a natural, earth-based, indigenous way of doing things, and understanding that C-sections were created by African doulas. They found that there was this way of being able to save mothers from dying, and
I
that it
didn't
was
know
something that
that.
was, yeah, this is something that the parteras shared with me, which encouraged this decision of being able to reframe and to recorrect that relationship, which for me had been jaded with the medical system for a long time, because of the horrors that I had heard about mothers, and my own horrors with the medical system growing up, where I never felt really taken care of, or as if my opinion mattered, and I was really afraid of being a victim of that. And
Mhm.
that was not the case at all.
Wow. That it also makes me, there's this researcher I really love, Mary Riddick, and she studies indigenous tribes all throughout the world. And one thing that she was saying is part of the reason why C-section rates have become so high is because the world, the community of the world is more globalized rather than, isolated communities. And so usually within a tribe, everyone's pretty much the same height, same build, same lineage. And now people from different lineages are mixing, like a 6'4" or 6'5" Troy, meeting a 5'2" Joe, that like, yeah, you do have similar roots from Africa, but like you're also very different structurally as people. But yeah, she explained that like that's also why, just because of like the sizes and shapes of babies are just changing because we're mixing our DNA a lot more than we have historically. So I'm personally like, I'm on the free birth train. Like I love that stuff. That's how I want to give birth. But I think that's it's so important for me, somebody who's also very jaded by the medical system, to hear your story and to just remember like what are factors, how do you want to choose to write the story? What's the narrative? What do you want to get feed the mind with?
But see, and that's not to not name the fact that there have been just an immense amount of taking advantage of mothers, especially women of color, mothering and not being able to validate the experience and their choices,
Mm,
and just history of neglecting women and neglecting their voice. So it makes it difficult for women to be able to tap into their intuitive faculties and to trust themselves. And I think that if anything, I would like to give rise to that, to be able to just speak on how important it is as mothers to listen to ourselves, because a lot of anxiety does arise from not being able to trust your own system, because you're listening to the voices of your family members telling you how to do things, and then society is telling you another thing, and then the medical system is chiming in on what is right for you and your baby. But meanwhile, there is this magical connection that only you can have to this soul. Only you can really listen. And for me, that has been one of just the most incredible things, is to have this direct connection with my baby, and know what she is needing when she is in trouble, or how I'm needing to adjust myself to create the foundations for her to be what she needs to be in this world.
mm. Yeah, it's like the difference between like so many people within this initiation of pregnancy and motherhood, they infantilize women. It drives me nuts just talking to my patients and their experience with the hospital system or just family members. Like they infantilize them rather than, hold their hand as they walk through this initiation into becoming a mother, into a steward of life, a steward of freaking existence for another being. Like it's just there's nothing bigger than that. And I think that what women need is more, yeah, empowerment versus questioning and just I mean I could go on. This is a soapbox that I harp on a lot within myself. And anyone who else will listen, but I'm gonna stop myself there.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for naming that. This is something that Troy and I, we feel really passionate about. We are going to be writing this book called The Unconditioned Child for
Mhm.
that reason. I think it is important to be able to step into this empowered role of knowing that you know what is best to create the conditions and to create the space for your little human to be able to guide us in telling us what it is that we're needing to provide for them to fulfill their dharma. So James Hillman speaks on the parental fallacy, which is this idea that we are responsible for our child's outcomes. And that is placing an immense amount of shame and guilt on parents to be a certain way, and to control what is going to happen with their child's life. And the truth is that the baby has, and the soul has its own blueprint of what it will become. And there's science to actually back this. There was a study that took a seed of a tree and placed it in water, and the somatics that it created foreshadowed what the tree was going to look like. And it's very similar to these souls that are coming in, especially a soul that is coming in the realm to parents who work with plant sacraments. There's a very specific soul there, and that soul chose you for what you are able to do and provide for the experience that you're meant to offer earthside. And for us, we've noticed that it's important to allow baby Zoe's curiosity to lead the way and where her attention is going, so that we learn what she's interested in. And that at the same time, the Toltec, they speak on how what you're giving your attention to, and what you're placing your attention on, it creates this environment for your mind and the lens through which you are viewing the world. So for us, we find that it's very important once we wake up to go and place her attention on a flower, and to have that be her life. We are so lucky that we're living in a Costa Rican jungle and surrounded by nature, and that her attention gets to be placed on nature. And with that, we've noticed how in the beginning she would yank the flowers, and just feel the texture and the sensation in her hands and crumple it. And she's starting to understand very early on that there's life in the flower. So now she doesn't crumple it, she caresses it gently, which is beautiful to observe. I wave to the flower because we wave to humans, and we wave to dogs, and we wave to all these life forms. So she sees me wave to the plant life, so she's understanding that all that's alive too. I need to be gentle.
Mm. So you didn't in the beginning when she crushed the flower, you weren't like, "Oh no, no, don't crush that." You just let her explore within it. Right.
Explore, and then gently guide, and then gently, she's learning from us. She's learning what we are doing. So if I'm yanking flowers, then she's going to feel that, okay, that's what we do. That's what we do as humans. So while she would yank the flower, I let her do that, and then also caress the flower in front of her, so she was seeing how I was interacting with the flower.
Yeah. There's this phrase in writing, show me, don't tell. So in terms of describing someone like, oh, he made crumpled his face in anger, where, like you describe, the eyebrows drew together, his eyes darkened, whatever it might be. And I love that as a parenting philosophy. Show, don't tell, because kids don't listen. Kids just watch how you live. And I also, one thing that just keeps on, well, as you just describe, explain this James Hillman concept that kept on hearing in my head is the word parent, mother and father are those words for a reason, like very specifically. It's not like master, you're not her master. You're not her owner. You're her parent. You're her mother. And the connotations and the differences and the definitions behind those words, the differences mean something here. And I think that's a little bit lost. Like my mom always says, no credit, no blame. And I still don't know entirely how I feel about that phrase, because I think it's very loaded. But in a lot of ways, yeah, she's going to be who she's meant to be. And there's only so much a parent is, responsible for that.
Yeah, she has this own blueprint, and she's going to become what she's. There she is.
Yeah, she is.
One moment. Let's put her on my booby.
Hi, Mama. Hi, sweet girl. Oh, so this was the perfect segue as we went from birth to parenting, because now you're a mama. And actually, I'll let you take a moment to settle with Zoe as if you don't mind, I'm gonna read that Instagram post that inspired me to ask you for this conversation. Okay, so back in March, Joe, she posted something on her Instagram that really touched me, and so I'll read it out loud. I recently journeyed into the heart of my mother anxiety, facing it head on. I saw how my mind wove intricate stories, reflections of the fear living in my body, stories that stood between me and the vast, overwhelming love I hold. I learned what it is to surrender, to dive fully into the raw sensations of fear and anxiety, not as something to escape, but as something to meet. And in that meeting, I found not resistance, but peace, not burden, but gratitude. The energy shifted from feeling unworthy of these immense gifts to cherishing them with my full presence, from questioning whether I deserve them to knowing deeply that I am here to hold them, honor them, and love them completely. There's so much. There's so much I could say to that, but I would love for you to take that because yeah, mom guilt, mom shame, not enoughness, also waiting like when things are too good. When is the ball going to drop? I think those are universal feelings within in motherhood and in humans, but really motherhood.
Yeah, I was really in the thick of it, of feeling so much just fear and overwhelming chest pains, of really really in the thick of it, of understanding that I need to be fully present in ensuring that this baby's life is well taken care of. And I was placing a lot of pressure upon myself. It's interesting because I didn't realize, I understood myself to be a perfectionist. And this completely took a whole different life form, being a mom and trying to be perfect in being a mom, because of also, yeah, that societal pressure, or what my family is going to say of me as a mom, the judgment I could receive if I don't do this right. How is she going to be if I fail, if I lose my temper, or if she sees me be sad or cry, how is this going to influence her? So there was just all of this creating this whole different reality in my body that made it difficult for me to it just wasn't sustainable, like it. And I understood that I had to face this head on, so I did an iboga ceremony to go into it.
Oof.
And what I learned was how much of this fear was just part of the conditioning of attaching fear and love together. That if I love something, that I was going to lose it. So just this immense attachment of, okay, I experienced this immense amount of love that I've never experienced before. And okay, that means we have to protect at all costs. We have to be perfect in order to keep it. So being able to face it directly allowed me to understand that the sensation of fear and anxiety in my chest was a lot like an explosion of love. So if I was able to tune into the fear, then I learned that that was my mind's label of what love used to feel like in the past. It used to feel like fear. It used to feel like, oh shit, I'm going to lose this, from the experience of losing people that I really loved. And yeah, it had to require just this conscious presence to be able to reframe that and to feel the love. and teach my body how to feel love in those moments where I was feeling an immense amount of anxiety.
That resonates so deeply. I think about there's a lot of rhetoric in culture and society that speaking of love and fear and motherhood, my mom's calling me, of that like the more afraid you are to lose them, that means the more you love them. Like there's this at my dad's house, my stepmom had gifted him this thing, and I remember reading it growing up, being like, "Oh, that's so precious." And it was like, if you live to be 100, I want to live to be like 99, so I don't have to live a day without you. I'm butchering it, but it's something like that. And I was like, growing up, I think that was so precious and like whatever. Now I'm like, that's a little bit, that's very fear-based. That's like, I love you so much, I can't live without you. And I think that's a subconscious programming that is in so much of so many people, so much of society that like I've had to unravel a lot this year in leaving my ex. And it's like an addiction of like, how anxious and fearful can I be to prove how much I love you?
Yeah, I wanted to, it's interesting that you named that because there's the oof, give me a second. I want to pull it up so that I don't butcher it. I believe it's the four remembrances
Mm-hmm.
in in Buddhism is let me just pull it up so that I'm able to. Okay. So there's the five remembrances and that speaks to these five truths that if we're able to accept this, that can reduce an immense amount of anxiety. One is I am of the nature to grow old. There's no way to escape growing old. I am of the nature to have ill health. There's no way to escape having ill health. I am of the nature to die. There's no way to escape death. All that is dear to me and everyone I love are of the nature to change. There's no way to escape being separated from them. My actions are my only true belongings. I cannot escape the consequences of my actions. My actions are the ground on which I stand. So, being able to understand these things over and over and remind ourselves that everything is going to change, people are going to die, you can get sick, all of these things can happen, and accept that that's the natural flow of life.
Yeah.
Easier said than done.
True. But if you can't accept that, then the love is infiltrated. It becomes something else. It's just I've come to realize it's no longer love. It's actually funny that you brought that up because the back last year, our first Iboga ceremony together with Tepescoite, you sang that and I wrote a song based off of like what I learned in that, and the second verse was is the five remembrances.
Really? I have
Yeah.
to hear that. You can sing that for us.
Let's sing that verse. It goes, I accept I'll age and I will die. I will be of ill health. It is my nature, I remember. I will not deny. All those I love and I hold dear are subject to change. We're all connected, and my word is all I own. And then it just goes into the chorus. Oh, sweaty.
I'm so glad I asked you to sing that. That was really, really beautiful.
Thanks for forcing me. Now I'm like my forehead veins popping, my hands are sweaty.
Okay. Well, that's really, it does create the freedom to love unconditionally and to actually embody what love is. Because a lot of times our loving is enmeshed with the human condition and experience of control and wanting attachment and that doesn't create the freedom, even in partnerships. When we love someone, that person is changing. And if we are attached to this idea of who that person is meant to be, then we can't fully love them. We're loving a past version or a version of them that we have created in our mind. And the more we can dismantle that, the more we can actually fully show up for that person and just love them in whichever version of themselves they are embodying in that moment. Once again, this goes back into what we first started talking about of presence, and motherhood has further dived me into that lesson of what it really looks like to be present in the moment, and to not hold on to the past and my idea of what Zoraya needs to be doing, or how she needs to be living life, or what she is interested in. It's part of just really fully listening and remaining here so that I could love her and also do what I need to do within my being, take care of myself. And in that, I can silence my mind and listen to what is being communicated in her field too, because she's babbling and she doesn't have the words or the means to say I want this now. So once again, that's just inviting this sense of attunement to her and her needs that requires multisensory gifts.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I just think of like, it's like, I'm here with you right now. I love you right now, right now, right now, right now, versus like, I love who I think you are. I love who you're meant to become. Like, yeah, that's to me the greatest way to love right now, right now, right now.
Mm-hmm. Bossy. Yeah. That's why we really, Troy and I, we really want to create this transmission of the unconditioned child so that we're able to put into a framework of what it looks like to be there, to be in that presence. It's interesting because Troy and I are big fans of Krishnamurti, and while Troy was reading his books and watching his lectures, he was finding himself get somewhat like just understanding that Krishnamurti wouldn't give an answer, so that people would remain in this receptive state of listening. And instead of, there being this question and there finally being an answer, no, you stay in that alertness. And that's what we feel like parenthood has been, of not getting a definitive answer of this. No, you stay open and you remain receptive and looking and watching. And in that, you're being guided in a much more authentic way, as opposed to reading a book of what parenting needs to be, or getting the doctor's opinions of what is going on with your baby. No, you're staying open. You're looking at everything in this holistic model of what her body language is saying, what her sounds, and how this different cry is signaling something else.
Mm. That's a really good message, especially for first-time parents. So thank you for sharing that. Oh, well, thank you for sharing all of this. I unfortunately have to go somewhere in 20 minutes. I want to keep going. I have so many like little tangents I would love to get in with you, but let's start to close this out here. Um, well, on this, do you feel complete on this stream of consciousness that we've been on right now before I ask my closing questions?
I believe so. I think that there's a lot that we've been able to cover, and the biggest one is that just the empowerment piece more than anything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Truly. Okay. So as you know from the last episode, food therapy is big for me. And I think I love hearing people share what works for them within their seasons of life. So I would love to hear whether that's an herb, a meal, a food, whatever comes to, it could be water, like whatever comes to mind. What has really served you within this phase of motherhood of life as Joe?
I'm so excited about this because this is a new fruit that I had not known of and I am obsessed with called jocote, which is jocote, which is in Costa Rica. It's a mixture, I think, in its constitution, something of cashew and mango. So it has a creamy texture. Zoraya loves these as well, and they grow on the property in which we are on. And when my mom was here, she told me that she was obsessed with these as a child. So jocotes are a fruit if you can get your hands on them. I don't know how. Maybe you have to come to Costa Rica, but they are delicious and they are in season and they have been so nourishing to both me and Lil Bubs.
Oh, 3 generations. That fruit's been serving, nourishing 3 generations of women here. And I'm sure more than that. Beautiful. Okay. And then the last question is to whatever depth you're comfortable is sharing a pearl from a recent darkness that you're either currently moving through or you're on the other side of.
Give me a moment to think about this one. Hmm. I feel that a recent thing that I have learned is just a deeper layer of self-love. And especially knowing that Lil Bubs is looking at me, I am a lot more conscious of how I interact with myself, how I look at myself in the mirror. I know that she's looking at me if I'm putting makeup on. How can I do so in a more gentle way? How can I touch my face in a much more gentle way? How can I brush my teeth in a much more loving way? Because I know that she is observing me and looking to me of how she's going to want relate to herself. So I have been learning how to infuse more love into my being. So this morning I woke up and the first thing I did was infuse love into every part of my being, of my body, starting from the very tip of my toes to the last little frizzy strands of my hair. and and infuse every bit of myself with love because she's receiving that in my breast milk. She's receiving me, and the more love I can pour into myself, the more love I can pour into not just my baby, because that's understanding now as I'm embodying the mother that how can I be a mother to all things? How can I mother and in all sense of the word? How can I mother life around me?
Nurture, how to nurture life back. Or it sounds like it's a synonymous word for that right now is nurture. Yeah. That's really, I love that practice. I think that's something I want to remember to do.
Mhm.
Mm. Oh, well, thank you so much, Joe. I love you and I love this talk and I'm so excited for this to hear or for this to hit someone's ears who doesn't have this kind of mindset or conversations or community in their lives because it's I think it's a way to be that's just more in ease, more in flow, and it helps usher this new generation into a place where there's just less disconnect and less trying to control others. I think that's where I would love to see the world head in this new generation. Like just that. If it's just that, like I think as like the ancestors, we're doing a good job.
Honestly, just this indigenous way of listening to nature and allowing ourselves to be guided, because otherwise we just let old conditionings of the past in the mind trying to conceptualize that which is unconceptualizable, if that's a word.
Yeah. Well, one of my favorite quotes is the Tao that can be named is not the Tao. Like if you try to put words to the way, the Tao, the thing that is the very essence of life, then that you missed it. You missed it. And but even though it's the only way we can let other people know about it, but it's again like you cannot know until you are in the wisdom.
But
And yeah. Yow yow. My
yeah.
favorite. I've been like yow 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 lately.
Yo, yo.
Well, how can people find you?
You can visit our website, www.rootandwisdom.com. We are also at sacredrootsfoundation.com or Instagram at joe.trinidad or at Root and Wisdom on Instagram.
And I will link that all in the show notes. Yay! Thank you, Joe.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you so much. And I love that beautiful transmissions. Once again, I have to say there's no one that I have listened to extrapolate so much wisdom and truth in such an authentic way. So I'm grateful that I get to be on this offering with you.
Thank you. Thank you for seeing me in that because I love it so much, and I'm very much, in the bubble. So when I have that reflection, it like.